Good afternoon, everyone. This is Stephanie Stombach, Child Nutrition Consultant with the Maine Department of Education's Child Nutrition Program, and welcome to the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program training for school year 2019. During today's webinar, all attendees have been placed on mute, and this webinar is being recorded so you can view it at any time. Also, feel free to submit a question in the question and answer box on the control panel. If you have a question, feel free to type it in the box on the screen, and all questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. Attendance will be emailed once the webinar. So, with that being said, let's get started. So let's start with some updates on the FFVP awards. We are still in the process of approving applications for next year, school year 2019. We received over 150 schools that applied, and I have contacted people to clarify some of the information on the applications, such as the serving times, to make sure they're outside of the breakfast and lunch service. And when the awards are finalized, they will be made available on the Child Nutrition listserv and also posted on the Maine DOE update. And I hope to have the awards list released by the end of this week, if not by early next week. So as far as the funding goes, the state of Maine received $2,055,882 in FFVP funding, which is similar to what we received last school year. Part of the funding will be set aside for DOE administrative expenses, but the majority goes straight to the schools. And as always, we will allocate $50 per student multiplied by enrollment to determine the funding for each awarded school. Federal guidelines require us to award between the ranges of $50 and $75 per student, and we don't have the ability to award below that amount. And so we always award at the low end to allow more schools to participate and benefit from into schools with the highest percent of free and reduced price students. So as many of you know, the funding structure for FFVP has changed. This became effective for the current school year. And so it changed so that it aligns with the federal fiscal year. So it runs from October 1st through September 30th. However, in Maine, FFVP is tied to our claiming system and is claimed as at the same time as other program expenses. So we don't have the ability to carry over funds from school year to school year in NEO. And we would need the of 2018, and it will need to be spent by June 30th of 2019 until a solution can be found. And we're working right now to find a solution for this so that funds can be spent in September. To your annual participation packet in NEO. It will be uploaded under supplemental attachments, and only one addendum is needed per district. In the packet, we post the grant awards in our nutrition reports in NEO, and the awards will be found in the FFVP usage report in NEO under school year 2019. So now I will show you how to access that report. Usage report looks like. So this report can be, and no login is required as it is public information, so anyone can access it at any time. So here you see fiscal year 2018 is selected, but you'll want to make sure you select fiscal year 19 when the awards are announced. And once you have selected the fiscal year, find your district in the drop-down menu, and then you're going to hit View Report. Sometimes you have to scroll over the October through June column, which shows the grant amount for each school. In addition to listing the award amount, the report primarily serves as a tool to help you keep track of your spending, which we will discuss later in the webinar. So now we're going to do a quick refresher of the regulations. In order to participate, students certified for free and reduced price meal benefits. So here are some general FFVP program parameters. Familiar with if you've had the program for a number of years. Provided during the school day and separate from the breakfast or lunch meal. Offered to all students free of charge and regardless of status. You must serve a minimum of 2 days per week, although it is recommended to serve more often to use the funds in a timely manner, and it's in the best interest of the students. And I've also listed some other reminders, such as fruit may not have accompanying fruit dips, and this is because fruit's widely acceptable by students. And you can claim the cost. However, they must be low fat and portion controlled. And this can be helpful in getting students to try an unfamiliar food or a food that can be consumed easier. And labels are allowed 1 day per week and must always include a nutrition education component is required. But in order to make the program most effective, nutrition into the program in some way. With fun facts in the classroom. Or and I apologize if the audio is cutting. So some districts keep a binder of fact sheets at each school so they can easily be pulled when a fruit or vegetable is featured. This is a way of keeping it simple but also effective. You can also use free or low-cost resources from Team Nutrition. In order to apply for the FFVP, all schools needed to be enrolled as a Team Nutrition school. So take advantage of the resources that are available to you. while also keeping in mind that the funds can't be used to purchase nutrition education or promotional materials. Here's an example of a vegetable handout with fun facts and pictures. We have samples available on our FFVP webpage that were developed by the Maine Child Nutrition Office as well as from other states. And feel free to go check these out and use these in your program. So in Maine, we are lucky can help with nutrition and food education in schools. And so I've listed some here, but this is by far not an exhaustive list. And many of these partners are the ones that you highlighted in your applications, and I'm sure many of them are familiar to you. This really takes the burden off of the teachers. Partners come into the school and talk to the students of nutrition education, and maybe do taste testing and other activities. And I know that they would be more than happy to work with you. So moving on to publicizing, be widely publicized and promoted in your school community. Although many schools have had the program for a number of years, you may have new families move into the school that are unfamiliar with it, and also new students are coming in every year. So it's good to communicate this program to them because it's a benefit to the student and also the family. So I've included some ways to publicize the program and get the word out. The most common ways are through the menu and various newsletters, but I've listed some other ways, such as robocalls to family, school board meetings. Mention that this is a part in the district, and it's a great benefit for the students and families. Press releases are always helpful. We're seeing a lot more school media centers, for example, having screens in the lobby that have information about the program, and also email blasts to school staff to let them know about the program. So these are some examples of using a combination of technology, which is usually successful in reaching in the community. And as always, make it by referring to it as the USDA Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. So here are some common review findings that we're seeing with administrative reviews. And as many of you know, FFVP is a part of the review process. So we're seeing schools serve less of the more exotic or familiar foods to students, such as and those other less common foods. And we're seeing more of your typical, which is fine to serve, increased consumption of fruits and vegetables, but also expose students to new and different foods. So we want to see a combination of both. And doing this would also allow schools to spend their allocation more easily because they're typically higher cost items. Another common finding we're seeing is funds not being monitored properly. You must ensure the person running the program is well trained, as well as teachers, if the snack is delivered and consumed in the classroom. So communication between the kitchen and classroom is very important to make sure that things are running smoothly, avoiding food waste. And financial management is the most common finding we're seeing during reviews, as schools are not using their funds in a timely manner. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail. So as far as reporting requirements are concerned with FFVP, each year prior to February 1st, you'll need to complete an FFVP site monitoring review form, and it asks many of the questions that we ask during a review. So it's a helpful self-review to make sure that all of the program requirements are being met. So it's recommended to complete at the same time as your other site monitoring review forms are due for breakfast and lunch, so you can get everything done at the same time. And after it is completed, you'll want to make sure it's maintained at the school. It does not have to be sent to us. You will keep it in-house and save it for future reviews, because we do ask for that. Now let's talk about allowable costs in the program. So FFVP costs are separated into two categories. So we have operating and administrative funds. And operational funds include your fruits and vegetables. And the majority of the FFVP allocation should be spent on fresh fruits and vegetables. It also includes labor to prep, labor to serve, supplies such as your napkins, bowls, cutting boards, other small wares, that sort of thing. And on the right side of your screen, that's where I've listed administrative funds and what are some allowable costs for administrative expenses. So this includes labor to order product, labor to schedule, to prepare the claim. It doesn't seem like a lot of time to claim, but it adds up over time. This also includes large equipment purchases such as coolers and refrigerators. But keep in mind that these costs must be prorated if used in other programs such as lunch. And before you purchase these items, you do need permission from DOE. And another important note about administrative funds is that they are limited to 10% of the total grant amount for each school. And this includes labor and equipment costs. So if you have a large equipment cost that, or a piece of large equipment you'd like to buy, if it's beyond 10% of the total school's allocation, the remaining cost must be covered by the food service account. So something to keep in mind. And if you ever have a question on whether a cost is allowable or not, please feel free to contact me and we can discuss it. So once you know if a cost is allowable or not, how do you go about claiming reimbursement for those expenses? So you will file an FFVP school detail each month under the specific categories we discussed previously. And you'll also want to keep all backup documentation on site to support the monthly claim for reimbursement and during an administrative review. Remembering that paperwork must be kept for 3 years plus the current. And also, just a side note, to make sure that claims are filed on time for all programs, as this is a component of the awards process for FFVP. So it's very important to make sure they are filed and approved by the 8th of the month. You will also make sure you get reimbursement in a timely manner. So here's an example of an FFVP school detail. You will report your operational costs, including food, labor, and other, and then your administrative costs, which includes your equipment, labor, and other costs. As a note, only large equipment costs are put towards your administrative equipment, such as coolers and food processors, so those higher cost items. And if you're purchasing smallwares and carts, for example, those purchases will be reported under operational other costs because they're a smaller cost, so they can be put towards operational. And then the last step of filing the school detail is to list the products purchased, just so we know only fresh product is being claimed. So this is another helpful report you can find in NEO under the nutrition reports. It's called the FFVP Monthly Claim Report. It shows how much you claimed for operational, administrative, and total expenses each month. And it's good practice to check this once a claim has been filed to make sure everything went through, because we found in some cases it hasn't always gone through, so it's a good edit check. It is updated based on the most recent claim that has been processed. So once you have gotten the deposit check, then that will be reflected in the monthly claim report. So moving on to financial management. So as mentioned earlier in the webinar, we have found that many schools are not spending their FFVP allocation. And based on the usage report as of May 30th of the current school year, approximately only 65% of funds have been spent statewide for all schools. So that's quite a bit of money left on the table. And any funds that are not spent are returned to USDA. And when we send funds back, we send the message that we don't need them. So this may lead to receiving less funding in the future as a state. So because of this, we're looking more closely at financial management and monitoring fund usage. We conduct a midpoint review during the school year and also at the end of the year to see how funds are being used. And we're also looking at financial management more closely as part of the awards process each school year. So as with all programs, it really is important to have a budget and to monitor it and stick with it. And I think this is why funds aren't being used in a timely manner, is because budgets aren't either haven't been developed or aren't being monitored. So developing a budget will help ensure FFVP funds are spent in a timely manner. And I've included a couple ways to budget for the program. So first, we have a weekly budget. And so you can simply take the number of weeks of school and divide by your allocation or what your award was. Another method is to develop a monthly budget where you take the number of months of school and divide by your allocation. So whichever one works better for you and your schools. And I really can't stress enough how important it is to communicate with staff who are completing the food orders to avoid over or underspending. So it's important to give them a budget and make sure they stick to it. If they are the ones completing those food orders. And there are going to be months where the number of serving days will be lower, such as months with school vacations. And then in June where you have less, serving days. But make sure that it's balanced out during the other months. So here is a link to a YouTube video we developed to assist with budgeting. You can also find it under the Maine Child Nutrition YouTube channel just by doing a search for it. So feel free to view the video if you need some pointers and some other tips, because you might find some helpful information there. So going back to the usage report, so here it is again on your screen. Make sure to check it frequently to stay on track with spending. And as you can see, the grant amount is listed, as well as the grant balance. So if you move to the right side of the report, you see the grant balance, and then we have a grant usage percent. So by the time your January claim is filed, you should be close to around 50%, give or take. And then towards the end of the school year, you should be pretty close to about 90%. This year, we had a lot of snow days, which had an effect on that. But really, with the budget, you just kind of want to work with it and adjust it as needed. So if you find you have some funds remaining, here are some tips to spend down your allocation. So you could hold kickoff assemblies or tasting days, just keeping in mind that the kickoff assembly would have to take place in October because that's when the funding becomes available. And also serve more of the exotic products during these special events to use up more of the money. And I mentioned that we conduct a mid-year review, but it's important for the district to conduct a mid-year review of spending. And at the midpoint, if you're underspending, evaluate why that is happening and find ways, or ask yourself some questions as to how it could be spent a little better. So how many days per week are you currently serving, and can you increase to more days? Do you need any equipment? Those types of questions. Increase the number of serving days if you need to. Charge labor to FFVP, so either administrative or operational labor. So operational would be whoever is prepping, serving, cleaning up, because labor is one of those areas that typically isn't claimed, but if it's paid through FFVP, it's not coming out of the school nutrition account. So definitely, consider charging some labor if that's an option. So here are some other tips. Serve more exotic and unfamiliar foods, not just during, a kickoff or a special event, but throughout the year. Expose the students to different foods, and usually these foods are typically higher cost, so it will help in spending your funds. Serve prepackaged fruits and vegetables to reduce prep time when needed, such as on Mondays and Fridays when staff might have limited time to prep and serve, and that way they don't have any leftovers going into the weekend. And lastly, purchase local produce. So here's my shameless plug with local produce. So with FFVP, you do have greater flexibility in your budget to purchase local items. So it really is a perfect match to starting a farm-to-school program if you don't already have one. And it's great for the community because it supports farmers and growers area. Not to mention it educates the students on where their food comes from, which is really, really important for them to be aware of. And all in all, it's a great way to start a farm-to-school program. And I encourage everyone to serve, some local fruits and vegetables as part of the program during Maine Harvest Lunch Week. And I've listed the date here for the upcoming school year. So it will be held September 17th through the 21st. So be sure to book your calendars and try to serve some local produce as part of FFVP as well as the school lunch program. So it really is a nice fit to start using more local produce for FFVP, especially in the fall months when it's more available in season. So as with all programs, you need resources to help you navigate through the regulations. Be sure, if you don't already have these resources handy, that you have them available. And they include the Child Nutrition website. Our FFVP page has a lot of great information. The Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Handbook is also an excellent resource. It explains the ins and outs of the program and the how to go about doing the program, and even includes some information on allowable costs. And don't forget to check the NEO nutrition reports to assist with spending, because those are some really helpful tools to make sure that you're on track with spending. Because as I mentioned, we're looking at financial management more closely. We want to make sure that you're using your funds and that the students are getting the best benefit that they can. And as always, please use us at the Child Nutrition Office as a resource. So if you have any questions on the FFVP, don't hesitate to contact our office. You can reach me directly at 624-6732 or by email, which is listed on the screen. And so this concludes our webinar. And right now I will check to see if we have any questions. So just bear with me as I look for those. All right. Looks like just a lot of people that had trouble with the audio. It looks like there weren't any questions, and I apologize for the audio not working for some of you. So one of the questions we just got in was, are you making the slides available? And I'll make sure that the PowerPoint is posted on our website under the resources page. We have a place where all of the webinar recordings are posted, so we'll make sure that the slides are available on that page. Let's see, any other questions we have? Okay, so another question we have is, will we be able to order in September and put on our October order? So that's a good question, because as I mentioned with the funding change, the program doesn't start until October. And so the answer to that, unfortunately, is no. And that is because the produce, so if you were to order in September and claim in October, we're dealing with 2 different fiscal years. So you wouldn't be able to claim costs for September, which would be school year 2018 and school year 2019, because the money isn't there. It's 2 separate fiscal years. So you wouldn't be able to order in September and put that on your October claim. So I'll wait another minute to see if there's any other questions. All right, okay, let's see. All right, so the question is, all right, so still regarding the funding. So the question is, so there is no funding for September this coming year. And the answer to that is yes. And that's why for this current school year, you have to spend all your funds by the end of June, is because that will not carry over into September. So unfortunately, that means that there's no funding to use for September. Because we haven't found a way in NEO to make the school years talk to each other, because they're tied to the claim system, which is based on school year and not fiscal year, which is what FFVP is set up for now. And so, like I said, we're trying to find a solution for that, because it's definitely a disadvantage to the students. So the next question is, when would you be able to claim the produce that you purchased for September? So again, if we're talking about next school year, you wouldn't be able to claim the produce for September unless we found a way to transfer those funds into September, because it's 2 separate school years. So basically what that means is you could purchase the produce in September and serve it, but you wouldn't get reimbursement for those September costs. So the school lunch program would have to eat those costs. So if you purchase in September but pay in October, is that legal? So again, it wouldn't be, because it's two separate fiscal years. So you would be purchasing produce in September with fiscal year 2018 money, but serving it in October, or I should say paying it in October, which is another fiscal year. So that would not be allowed. So the other question is this new because we did have funding this year? So this current year that we're in, school year 18, this was a transitional year. So the way the funding worked was we received a separate pot of money for just September, like we had received in the past. So we had a separate amount for September, so that's why you had funds for that month. And then starting October 1 is when we began this new funding cycle that was supposed to run until September 30th, but for us needed to end by June 30th because of the school year. And so that the money we received in September for this current year was a one-time amount, and so we're not going to get that for the following school years. So that's why we need to find a solution to make sure that we can have funds for September. All right, does anyone have any other questions? I'm sensing no. And if you think of any, feel free to call me directly in the office or send me an email. So I think this concludes our webinar. And thank you all for your time today, and have a great day.